Welcome to the Engineers Hub podcast, where engineers come to connect, learn, grow, and get inspired. On every episode, we will be interviewing engineers, managers, technical experts, and industry leaders from various disciplines to share their stories and experience, uncover various engineering career paths, and inspire engineers to do more and be more. This is your host, Mamadou Jallo. Let's get started. Welcome to another edition of the Engineers Hub podcast. I am here today with our guest Arnold Morales. First of all, I forgot to mention this or brought it up earlier. Thank you for taking the time to be on here. I like to begin these always with gratitude, and I know that there are many things that you could be doing right now. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and hang out with us. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Mamadou. I'm excited for this.
It's my pleasure. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing right now professionally, and also anything else that you find interesting or would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit about me. I guess I'll go back and kind of give you a highlight of Arnold till now. I was born in Miami. After that, I grew up in Honduras, Central America. So it was really interesting going to live outside of the U.S. for pretty much middle school and high school, and then I came back to the U.S. for college. Not really for college. I came because of family problems. So I was at this warehouse working minimum wage. Didn't know, first generation, low income, no idea about college. And then I joined Ivy Tech Community College, and I signed up for engineering. When I signed up for engineering, I did not know what engineering was. I was a first generation, low income, minority, Hispanic in Indiana. There's not too many, and I literally didn't even know what engineering was. I spent that night going on Google and YouTube looking up what is an engineer, and I was signed up for engineering school.
Interesting.
And fast forward like 6, 8 years after that, I did my associates in engineering at Ivy Tech. I did my bachelor's at IUPUI, which is Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, which is a small non-target school. And Purdue University was through my master's. And when I did that, I was like vice president, president of a whole bunch of organizations. I got to intern at Northrop Grumman, and then ended up landing my dream job at Boeing. And that's kind of what I do now. I'm a systems engineer at Boeing. I've been at Boeing for about 3 years, rotating around the positions. And outside of work, I also run a podcast, Nontraditional College Success, which started out kind of like, okay, a lot of people helped me. So that's how I became a successful graduate. So now it's my turn to help others. So I just give a whole bunch of advice on kind of how to land a dream job and all that good stuff. And it now actually became more than a podcast. So now we actually incorporate as a nonprofit, and we have about 12 to 20 volunteers. We have 12 right now, but there's like 7 more that are signing up. So we're going to have around 20 volunteers just making events, panels, anything like that to help non-traditional, non-target students land their dream job.
Wow, that's awesome, amazing, man. That there's a lot to unpack out there.
Yeah,
Um, s-
definitely.
so, so you were born, so you were born in Miami, and then you
Hmm.
went, and then I guess you lived in Honduras during your
Middle school
childhood.
and high school. Yep.
In Wait, so you actually went to school here first?
So I went to elementary school in
Okay.
Indianapolis, and then I did middle school and high school in Honduras. So I'm not American enough because I didn't grow up in the U.S. to be American, and I'm not Honduras enough because I wasn't born in Honduras to be Honduran. So I don't know
So
what I am.
that's that's interesting because I've seen usually it's all the way around where people
Yes.
might live. That's my story because I was originally born in Guinea and I lived over there um, until I was 13, and then coming here to the U.S. It was very different. But how was it actually living here and then I guess going to Honduras where the culture is different? Did you feel out of place?
Um, so when I moved to Honduras, I was very small. I was like, what? I was in elementary school. I
Right.
was barely going to middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't care about much things at that time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I did know that my Spanish wasn't perfect, so cousins made fun of me. That's all I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, like I grew up there, so I went middle school and high school. Most of my kind of growing up life was there. So I ended up, speaking perfect Spanish, just doing everything like everybody else had. I was never considered kind of an outsider because I kind of became an insider until my family. They would always be like, "Oh, the American one." I'm like, sort of.
Yeah, that's something. only some people, if you immigrate and you have family outside of the country, you may relate to.
Yeah.
All right, so okay, finish middle school and high school over there, and then came here in the U.S. And then so when you came here after high school, you said I guess you were just found a job and kind of started becoming financially independent. Was that just you know I guess was that the path, and then what prompted you to eventually go to community college? Was there a discussion or anything like that? Or did
Yes.
someone encourage you?
I hated my job.
Uh,
That was the motivation. I was working at this warehouse moving boxes for minimum wage,
mm-hmm,
and I just hated my job. And I was like, okay, what are these managers? I'm like, okay, I'll be one of the managers of this warehouse. Like,
mm-hmm,
what do they do that I'm not doing? And I'm like, oh, they all have associate's degrees or like small degrees like that, technical degrees.
mm-hmm,
And I was like, you know what? I'll do the same thing. I'm gonna go sign up at Ivy Tech Community College. And then I had a cousin also that told me like, hey, you should go try out community college. It's like it's great. I went there.
mm-hmm.
So I went, tried it out. I loved it. Fell in love with engineering and just did really good. Started the first engineering society and got so many opportunities, man. You can't even imagine. Got to sit behind President Obama. Got to go to NASA. Like all these amazing things happened since for one decision.
Wow, that's really awesome, man. You should tell us about that more, but I may ask about that. But okay, so when someone decides to just, okay, I'm sick of this job, you don't just jump into I'm gonna do engineering, or is that what you did? Or did you know maybe you were good in math, or you liked solving challenges or problems? Or was there something that prompted you to lean towards engineering, which then you had to research? Or was it just the name of it that kind of sounded like something very interesting?
No, that's a great question. Because I didn't know what engineering was, so it wasn't definitely like I was thinking about the name.
Mm-hmm.
It was I was good at math and science in high
Mm,
school. I liked it and I was good at it. I just never
mm-hmm.
got good grades because I didn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
So also growing up, I loved motorcycles and cars. And as a kid, when I was 12, 13, I used to watch like videos of how do engines work, how do car engines work, and how do all these things work. So then I remember talking to an advisor and I
Mm-hmm.
took this like aptitude test and it came back that I would be good for a STEM major. And the advisor asked me like, what are the type of things you like? And I was like, I like motorcycle, I like cars. And he's like, well, have you ever thought about mechanical engineering? And I was like, I don't know what that is, but that sounds pretty cool. I like mechanical and engineering sounds cool. So I'm going to go do mechanical engineering. Plus I love math and science. So he's like, that's perfect for you. So that's how I found mechanical engineering.
Yeah, definitely. I think many people you get innocently, when you're so young, just out of high school, you just innocently hear the name and and it sounds really cool and you join, get into it. Me myself, unfortunately, I went to high school here, and then um, unfortunately, I didn't really have much advice or anything like that. So what ended up happening was I graduated, right, and I applied to these colleges, and I didn't even know how to check if it was accepted or admitted. But eventually, just after high school, I was like, you know what? Forget it. I was at the time, my mom was always telling me pre-med medicine. You cannot go wrong with medicine. But I just didn't know. I was also really good in math and science. But I went to community college. I did gen ed for the first year, try it out, and then eventually figured, hey, I like problem solving, and I like someone challenging myself. So if anything, I'm gonna do take engineering and then also do pre-med. So if one doesn't work, the other one will.
Yeah.
So that was the route that I took. So I
Good
was
one.
so I was pre-med in community college, as well as mechanical engineering track. I got my associate degree, and then from there on, when I transferred, I decided to just focus on engineering, mechanical engineering. So I dropped the pre-med part of things, but it was very interesting to see, how many people enter STEM, I guess, through either the interest in math and science, or just the wanting for something challenging, that will, at least my philosophy was, hey, worst case scenario, if this is hard and I can get through it, I can make it
Yeah.
through anything in life. So that was really my philosophy on it. So, all right, okay.
That's great. I do have a comment with that. So that's interesting. You talk about that, like, okay, engineering was your backup plan, because that I had on my podcast Jose Hernandez. He's an astronaut that went from immigrant farm worker and then he became a NASA astronaut.
Mhm.
And that's what his backup plan was too, engineering. He's like, my dream is to be an astronaut, but if I don't make it to be an astronaut, I'm gonna be a really good engineer. And he did both, so it
You
was
did both.
perfect.
Ah, that's awesome. So okay, so community college, right? And then you got your associate degree, and then you went to Purdue, right? And
Yep.
then you graduated from there, and currently you are a systems engineer at Boeing, right?
Yep.
How, I guess, did you know that I guess you wanted to work for s- a company like Boeing, or you said you entered through a many, right? You had a lot of opportunities and looked at a lot like Northrop Grumman and others. Was there anything in particular that spiked your interest?
Yeah, so definitely. So remember what when I signed up for community college, my dream was cars and motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
Because I grew up in Honduras, no one really thinks about rockets and airplanes. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like airplanes you only use, but you only use them to fly, but you don't like design airplanes or make stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was a NASA aerospace scholar in community college. I got invited to go to this NASA event, and they flew us to Huntsville, Alabama. Got to go to Marshall Space Flight Center, and it was amazing. I fell in love with aerospace. But
Mm-hmm.
I Googled and I looked up on Google, and it was like I Google everything, YouTube everything. Now that I think about it, I was like, "What is the best aerospace company for work for? What is the top aerospace company?" Because that day I fell in love with aerospace. I was like, you know what, cars and motorcycles are cool, but I want to do aerospace instead.
Mm-hmm.
And it was between Boeing and like all the big aerospace companies. But then Boeing was the biggest aerospace company and was my dream company since I was like at the NASA aerospace scholarship thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
NASA is like more of a government thing, and Boeing actually makes the stuff
All right.
like the airplanes and the space shuttle. So I was like, okay. And then all the other companies that were cool too, but they weren't the biggest aerospace company. And I really wanted to work at the biggest one. I don't know why. I think also because like in Huntsville, Alabama, they have this huge Boeing sign and like Boeing publicity.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me kind of like, whoa, that's so cool. And then tried several times, man. I applied. I went to career fairs like 6 different times and got rejected at interview stages with Boeing. And I just kept on trying until I got into Boeing.
Wow, that's awesome. So did you did you come in as a when you went into Boeing, did you come in as systems engineers, or was that kind of um, you know first of all, mechanical engineering is so broad, and even for just if you work in at Boeing, I'm sure there are other mechanical engineers that are that do other things, right? Maybe other some things different than you. So what can you explain to us a little bit more? What you actually do as a systems engineer, and what does that entail?
Yeah, definitely. And you were hitting on it. Like, how did I figure out I wanted to do systems engineering? That was interesting when you were hitting on that. Is most of your audience early career professionals or students?
So it's a combination of both. So we have
Okay.
mostly either undergraduate students, but also um, younger professionals such as myself who is into the first
Cool.
5 years of their career.
Yeah, definitely. So we are going to have several panels where we're going to talk about these things about like what is systems engineering, what is project engineering, what is manufacturing engineering. Because
Mm-hmm.
you're right, man. Like with a mechanical engineering degree, you can do so many different things. Like how do you find out what you want to do?
Yep.
And the way that I found that out was by doing internships. I
Mm-hmm.
did my first internship at Aerodyne Engineering, where I was a project engineer, and I
Mm-hmm.
liked it. After that, but I was like, okay, design, because in school, like, oh, you want to be a designer, you want to design things, because that's kind of what school teaches you to do. Then I went to Northrop Grumman. I was a design engineer for 2 summers,
Mm-hmm.
and it was cool. But I really wanted to work more with other people. I wanted to be an integrator. I wanted to have more meetings and get to talk to new people every day and like really be a kind of more of a people's person. I'm on a
Mm-hmm.
podcast. I'm definitely extroverted. So then I told kind of some mentors, and they're like, Arnold, you should look into systems engineering. I had no idea what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So like I always get into things I have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
Um, and they're like, you should look into systems engineering. So the second summer as an intern, I did half of my job was being a systems engineer, and I liked it. I liked it so much, and I was like, okay, now I know exactly what I want to do. I want to be a systems engineer.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I had another internship while I was in grad school, where I was an equipment and tool engineer for Praxair. and I
Mm-hmm.
was doing design work, and I was like, okay, that made me finalize. I do not want to be a design engineer for the rest of my life. I want to be systems. I rather do systems engineering, which is like other people love design engineering, so it's just personality. And then as a systems engineer, pretty much what I do is integrate. I keep on joking, but I probably shouldn't joke anymore about that. But I keep on saying like my job as a systems engineer is to make sure that all the kids are playing well in the sandbox, make sure that not everyone's getting out of their silos and working well together, because systems engineers pretty much were integrators, because there's such a huge complex system that you need someone to help integrate that, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
we do. And that could be either like risk management, requirements engineering, integration, verification, validation, anything like that. That's what usually what systems engineers do. And we're having a panel, I think, next month about what is a systems engineer, so I'll let you know about it if you want to share it.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely love to share it, and um, I think that's awesome because there is really not there's really no shade on what it's like to be these things for many undergraduate students, and then many times you just graduate and then you get thrust into whatever comes, whatever options are brought to you, whereas like you noticed, as soon as you did all of these things, designing and project engineering and systems engineering, you realize, hey, I prefer this, right? And I don't think a lot of undergrad students, know that they have the option to also try and match or focus on positions or career path that meets their personality. Because I also experienced the same thing. Of course, within engineering school, you have the you have classes that teach you the basics of designing, but just between me and you and whoever else is listening to this, with all the group projects, I know for me, usually I had other people who were doing the design. I may have the ideas, but as far as like sitting there on CADing stuff, I do sketches, like how the system works. I'll sketch and share my ideas. But as far as sitting there and designing, it's not that I don't like it. It's just I don't know. Other people like it more than me. So usually there's someone else that ends up doing it, and I find that I enjoy more, going out there and either speaking or doing reach out, or procuring items for projects, buying them, going to Home Depot, or calling companies and asking them if they have these materials, at least for capstone and things of that sort. I realize I enjoy that, but other people in my group didn't. So we just kind of each focus on the things on our strength.
Yeah.
So even when um, you know I had an internship that was a lot of design, MEP, drafting, I really did not enjoy it at all. And then I also had another internship, which was being an application engineer, which was more people oriented, but it was still very isolated. I eventually do gravitate towards a project engineering role where I'm working with, I could be working, and dealing with 10 or more people just in one day, just looking at different things. So I just kind of enjoy the uncertainty and the not, I guess the stimulation from different things and different people. It just gives me energy. Otherwise I get bored very quickly. So I find it interesting that you mentioned that, and um, it's just interesting. I wish students had more of an option, to know
Yeah.
that. So it's good that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, it's and it's true what you're saying is like kind of wish that students had more options to kind of like figure these things out to see like what is they're actually good at, what do they really want to go do? Because you go to a job, man, you work 8 hours a day, that's most of your day, and like you really want to go do something you like so you can
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it and be really good at it. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you found out that you didn't want to be a design engineer, you wanted to be a project engineer. That's perfect for you. Other people might go into systems engineering and hate it. They would be like, "This is so boring. I don't get to do design. I'm not a real engineer." Some people would say. So then they want to be design engineers. So it's really about figuring out what you want to do.
Yeah, I had some of my closest friends from college. Design, that's where they live. So
And it's
anything
okay
design,
because
I'm
that's what
like,
you like. That's what you like.
this is what I want to do. So I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I don't know how you stand it. But
And
yeah,
the same, they'll be like, I don't know how you stand being in meetings with so many people.
yeah,
Like everybody
absolutely.
has different strengths, and that's why we're teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's great that you guys are doing that. So did you did you start working and then eventually you decide you want to go get your master's? Um, what prompted you to even get your master's? If you share elaborating that for us.
Yeah, these are great questions, by the way. So my master's, I would recommend, if you ask me what you would recommend to people, I would recommend going into the workforce and getting your master's paid by your employer. That's what I would recommend. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what I did though. So we had this 5-year bachelor's master's program
Mm-hmm.
where all my electives for my undergrad was graduate courses. So it
Mm-hmm.
kind of sucked because it was harder for undergrad, but at the same time I was pretty much knocking off a year to get
Mm-hmm.
my, in one extra year I could get my master's. And then at that time also my wife was finishing college. So I didn't want to, because we were both going to leave Indiana. We were going to go somewhere out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't leave without her, like, because we had a long distance relationship for like forever. So we were like, okay, that's not an option. So I'm going to stay in school 1 extra year, wait for her to graduate and get my master's. That's how I decided. But it was more of a personal decision. I would recommend more for students to, if there's no other like specific reason, I would
Mm-hmm.
recommend go to the workforce, go learn what you really want to learn about, so you can go learn that. Because if I would have done my master's differently, I would have done a master's in systems engineering instead of mechanical engineering.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, and I think that's the other thing because I also had the option to do that 1 year, but for me, I just I enjoyed mechanical engineering, but I felt like I really needed a break from school, and I wanted to just experience the different industries, and get that exposure before I really kind of um, go further to getting furthering my studies, whether it's a master's or certifications. Um, and I also find it interesting that you were also married in college because that
Yeah,
was my life too. My last 2 years of undergraduate. That's interesting. Um, wow, very interesting. How?
yeah,
Um,
definitely non-traditional.
yes,
um,
definitely not.
I
Definitely not.
don't follow the rules of society, I guess is the thing with that. Yeah, so oh man, I started to laugh about that. I forgot what I was gonna say. I had something to say, but whatever.
No problems. Yeah, I, I am. I think. Do I? No, I only know one other person within my class that was married. So we were the odd ones out of our engineering graduating class. But I guess can you just this podcast is about your profession, but it's also about you personally. So
Yeah,
um,
man, I'm an open book, man. You ask whatever you want to know.
so I just because at least for me, when I decided after my associate degree going to I guess going to my junior year, transferring to Ford University to get my bachelor's science degree. Um, I decided to get married. It was based on religious reasons. For us, in order for us to really be together, and I enjoy being a couple. We have to do it the right way, which required us to be
I love it.
marriage. Can you just elaborate on that? Because of course, many people are in college and are in a relationship. Boyfriend girlfriend.
Yeah,
Can you just elaborate for you? What kind of led to that? Being
yeah,
married in
definitely.
college.
Pretty much, just Arnold. Why did you get married so young? I get asked all the time. Don't worry. So pretty much what happened in my case was I met my wife when I was in Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
She was my girl. Well, she was my friend. Like we've been not dating, but we've been like liking each other and talking to each other since we were like 15 years old. So
Wow.
since like 15 to like 18, we were always talking to each other. We always like hang out.
Mm-hmm.
When I turned 18, um, we kind of made it official that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. Like we were official with parents' permission and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
then I was in college in the US and she was in Honduras. So
Mm-hmm.
we had this long distance relationship for about 2 years where I went to Honduras in like 2 to 3 years. I went to Honduras like 8 times. Every single time there was a spring break or vacation between classes. The next day I was on a flight going back home because I wanted to be with my girlfriend just because I was like really madly in love.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was starting to get to a point where she was struggling in Honduras with her schooling and everything, and I was struggling with getting internships because like, how am I gonna get an internship if I'm gonna be in Honduras?
Yeah.
So it didn't really make sense. And then at that time we were like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't see my life like being without you anyways. Like because we were waiting for to finish college so we can get married,
Mm-hmm.
just so I guess we can follow the society rules. But then it was like, well, why are we gonna be apart for 2 3 more years when we could just be together and be happier? So then we're like, okay, let's do it. Let's get married. And yeah, then we got married, and she came over to live to the U.S. And now And then it's kind of interesting because so I interned in Utah, and
Mm.
in Utah, most people are Mormon. So a lot of them get married very young. And so it was the only place I've ever been that it's not weird. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is perfect. Everybody there was married young. I was like, oh, this is cool. I fit in right in. Um, so yeah, and then we got married right when I went from my associates to my bachelor's. So then I like the last next 3 4 years with her,
Mm.
and she's killing it. Also, she actually has an internship at Boeing too. So pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. Did she also take the engineering track or?
No, she's a HR and marketing.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Um, wow. Interesting. It's just, you never know. I wouldn't have guessed that you are married.
I have a
Do
2 year old
you
too,
have any
man. I have a
kids?
2 year old.
Oh,
See,
okay. I was about to say.
so many things
You
you've
have
done
two
good,
year
but I have
old?
a 2 year old.
I can beat you there. I have two.
Ah,
I
I
have.
can't. I can barely do it with one, so I don't know how you do it with two.
Yeah, I have my oldest is my daughter. She's gonna be turning 3 this July, and then I also have a 9 months old son. So
No, congrats, man.
he's
That's
a
cool. You got the
COVID
little couple
baby.
there now.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's awesome.
uh, we can't fit in my car anymore. So
Yeah,
my
but
wife keeps talking about getting a bigger car every day now.
yeah, it's a lot of work, man, to have a kid. So right now I'm taking it slowly with one because it's like, oh my god, it's so much work.
I'm telling you, just we live in an apartment complex, or like we live in the 11th floor, and the parking garage for where we live is in the basement, right? So just I'm telling you, by the time if we need to go out, by the time we get dressed, get the kids dressed, put them in the stroller, go down, sit in the car, I already need a break. I'm exhausted, I'm telling you. It's like I tell my wife this is an adventure every time we step out of the house.
Yeah,
Between the house or the car or apartment or the
that's
car,
funny.
it's an adventure. But it's also amazing to have be
Oh
able
yeah,
to
definitely.
share those moments with your kids, especially when you're young. I find myself I find my daughter really keeping me young, at heart, trying to play and things of that sort, jumping around, running around the house, playing hide and seek. So it's just brings back memories from childhood for myself. So I
I bought
appreciate it.
Legos, man. My daughter's two. She can't even do the Legos, but I bought them for myself. I was like, oh, it's for her. I'm gonna build these Legos for decoration for her. Her name is Amelia, so I bought her Amelia Earhart
Uh-huh.
Lego set. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do them myself. I
Hey,
never had
how
Legos when I was a kid. I'm like, so I'm gonna have Legos now.
my thing with that is somehow after we open it, by the next day, half of the pieces are missing or under a couch, and you can't even put the puzzle together anymore.
That's why I do it when she's sleeping.
That's really for her then.
No, yeah, I'm giving it to her. It's kind of for me.
That's awesome. That's really awesome, man. So okay, back to a little bit professional. I think you mentioned some traits. Um, so systems engineering, like you said, is more so about integrating multiple systems, right, that need to work together, to achieve, I guess, a common or similar purpose, right, or a desire and goal. So, for what you do, can you elaborate? What is, let's say, for example, someone is listening to this and they're in undergraduate, and they say, okay, well, I've seen systems engineering, I think I like it. How can I position myself to be qualified to even be considered for a role like that, coming out of college? What should I be looking for? What should I be trying out of my resume, and in terms of just skills and things of that sort, personality, what should I be trying to work on?
Yeah, definitely. So I think NASA put this out. They put out this presentation that's called Seven Skills of Highly Effective Systems Engineers. So I thought that was really cool. I forgot what they are, but but pretty much it talks about you really have to be one of those persons that really like to understand what people are saying. So you really need to get the requirements well. You need to kind of like be inquisitive and make sure like if you don't understand, you're not assuming. You're actually asking them for all the details.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone that's like very detail oriented, that would be good for systems engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that likes to speak in groups, that isn't just quiet in groups and like just wants someone to tell you what to do. A lot of times as a systems engineer, you go into a big very like we don't know what we're doing, but like how do we figure this out? So
Yeah.
it's kind of your job to be kind of a project engineer too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of project management and systems engineering that kind of overlap. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I also would say that you kind of need to understand technical, like you need to be good at understanding what you need to know to get the job done. Because like as a systems engineer, you work on so many different projects and you're not going to be an expert at pretty much any of those.
Yeah.
So you need to learn enough to be successful, but
Mm-hmm.
not so much that you're spending all your time learning and you're not really doing any work.
Yeah.
So I think those type of traits, and then for someone that wants to get into systems engineering, I would make sure you take up kind of the project management roles and the systems engineering roles when you do projects in school. Make sure
Mm-hmm.
you're that integrator or you're the person that's putting the group together, kind of that lead.
Mm-hmm.
And those type of things are really kind of what you look for in systems engineers.
Oh, awesome, man. You really know
Yeah,
your role well.
yeah, and
So.
systems engineering is very misinterpreted as we do a lot of things with like electrical systems and like like systems, but no, systems engineering is just a fancy way of being saying we're integrators. The definition of systems engineering is like an interdisciplinary approach of
Mm-hmm.
solving complex problems. So
Okay.
anytime there's something very very complex, you have systems engineers trying to help all the engineers work together. We're not really doing like the analysis, we're
Mm-hmm.
more like integrators. So I think that's always a misconception because it's like systems and you think about electrical systems or computer systems. You don't
Yeah.
think about a
Yeah.
model. Like you don't think about an airplane as okay, an
Yeah.
airplane is a system.
Yeah.
So a systems engineer is someone that integrates different people working on an airplane.
I'm glad you brought it up because I've I have looked into systems engineering, but it seems to be mostly most of the stuff out there regarding systems engineering is about perhaps um, software programs and things of that sort. But what you do more so is about it's not just
Yeah, more
intangible
project
things.
management. I would
Yeah.
consider myself more of a project management type role.
Okay. I see. All right.
Yeah, and then people confuse that all the time. So, and those are things I think college should teach you. I have a whole presentation of what you don't learn in engineering school. So don't even get me started about that.
We should share tips. I think I have a list too.
Yeah, I put a list on LinkedIn. Plug for my LinkedIn if you haven't followed me. I put up content pretty much every day.
No,
So I put up
don't worry.
I
We'll
put up
get to that. Yeah,
yeah,
I'll make sure.
definitely.
I'll
I
make
put up
sure we get it.
what are the things you don't learn in engineering school? And that thing just had like 100, 200 comments on it. Like everybody just ranting about all the things they didn't learn in engineering school, like 401k, taxes. You didn't learn how to network. You didn't know how to present yourself. You didn't learn pretty much anything you need in the real world. So
Yeah. Because I guess I don't wanna get too off topic. But the thing
no,
is,
no,
when you get hired and when you get start working a job, you don't get paid to just memorize formulas and pass tests and exams.
exactly.
You don't. So I think the other things are just as important as classroom learning, if you
Yes.
ask me. All right. So let's switch over to a little bit about the podcast. Can you share more on the podcast that you do? And I think you kind of touched on the reason why you kind of started in the
Yeah.
first place, but can you elaborate on it and then the nonprofit as well?
Yeah, definitely. So at non-traditional college success, the goal is pretty much to give non-traditional, non-target students the resources they need to land their dream job. That's pretty much it. Hey, what are the resources a student needs to land their dream job? Pretty much, they need things like build a network. They need things like get really good at interviewing. They need things like understand what you want first of all, so you can target things. So
Mm-hmm.
all those things we usually give them in one way or the other. We start to teach people on the podcast. We focus, and then like aside from that, you need the motivation to believe that you can work at those companies.
Yeah.
Like because non-traditional, non-target students, a lot of times they don't think that they're good enough to go work at the huge corporations, at the Boeings, at the Googles, at NASA. They don't think they can make it there, but they can. So one thing that we do with our podcast is we share those stories of underdogs that became really successful people. So we have people on the podcast like the astronaut that I mentioned that he went from immigrant farm worker to astronaut. We've had people that went from community college and working at McDonald's to being working at NASA as an engineer. We had people that were raising pigs in Mexico and now they're PhDs
Pig
with
racing, is that a
imaging.
thing?
Yeah, raising pigs in Mexico. This
Oh,
lady, and now
oh,
she's
pig
a
racing.
PhD in NASA with optical sciences. You got people like me that went to community college and now work at Boeing. So that's kind of what we try to share at the podcast. a lot of motivational stories, and we also like to talk about resumes. We like to talk about, hey, how to interview. I have episodes like how to win at the virtual career fair, because we
Mm.
also bring in recruiters, managers, and all that stuff to give advice on, hey, here's how you get into the companies. And then we do that also, we expand on that with the nonprofit. We With the nonprofit, we have company overviews, which pretty much every month we bring in a new company to talk about what is our company, what do we do, because people
Mhm.
know like NASA, but they don't know
Mhm.
like where are the NASA locations, what exactly is NASA doing. So we bring in NASA presenter to talk about it, and then we have a NASA panel so students can ask the NASA panel questions. And we've done that for NASA, Boeing, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, all these companies. And all the panels that we've done already, we're uploading them to YouTube so anyone can watch them there. But and then the other thing is we're doing like your questions about what is systems engineering. We're gonna do a whole series about what is systems engineering, what is project engineering, what is manufacturing, what is liaison, what is all these engineerings that you don't learn about in school. What
Mhm.
are they? So students can start figuring it out. And then the other one is more of a diversity panels that we do. It's okay, black engineers. We had a black engineers panel. We had a woman engineers panel, Hispanics. We just finished our community college panel last week. So those things, and then like little things here and there with like success stories that we share on social media, resources, free resources, and everything we do is free. So you make sure you go look at all those things. We don't charge anything for panels or anything like that. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do with the podcast and the nonprofit.
Wow, that's really awesome, man. I think that's really amazing. Just to see, you know, this is not just a one-off thing. What you're doing, this is something that requires a lot of commitment and time.
Oh yeah,
I'm involved
definitely.
in a nonprofit myself, so I know how much time it takes and commitment and sacrifice. You know, all the background meetings and team
Yes,
calls and it. Nobody
board
sees that.
meetings and
Yeah,
fundraising, and
yeah.
how do we pay for using Zoom panels versus this thing. It's not as glamorous as it sounds.
Yeah, a lot. Yes, it's honestly, if it's for the glamour, um, you're not gonna last long. You know, just doing nonprofit
No.
work because it requires a lot of time. So kudos to you and your team as well for
Yeah,
doing this
thank you.
stuff. This is amazing. And I'm surprised. I'm just learning more about this now. I think I might have benefited
Yeah,
from
so
these resources
it
myself.
is
So.
it is that like initially it was the podcast and it was just me for like 6 months. It was just me with the podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
that started to grow and it got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to do panels, and it was like, okay, now let's start building a team. And people love what I do so far, so they've signed up in like waves.
Mm-hmm.
So our initial wave of signups was like 12 people wanted to help. Now we have like 8 more people that want to help. So now we have like a roster of like 20 volunteers. So it's like, okay, how do we figure out what all these people can do to help? And we're just pulling out a whole bunch of content. But we are pretty new. We've been doing this for like 2 3 months, so pretty new. We just got incorporated like a month ago, so we're still pretty new, but we're what is it, small but doing a big impact.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I think yeah, I think the resources and the work that you guys are putting is definitely needed. Because again, it could be that difference. I think
Yeah, definitely.
a lot of students I think short sell themselves because after school they may have a dream and a lot of times they don't really know how to tie their passions, to what they studied for. But there's
Yep.
always a way to link it and and your personality, and otherwise you're just gonna have miserable. You're just gonna be miserable going to the office, because
Yep.
it's not always about the money. You need that fulfillment. So I commend you guys.
Yeah, thank you. And you just reminded me. We also starting to do a lot of lists. Like we have this hiring database where
Mm-hmm.
you can go find a whole bunch of managers that are hiring. With like 10 companies so far. We have like this list of companies that you can go work if you want to work in space. That's not NASA because everybody thinks about NASA. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, here's 20 other companies you can go work for to get experience to get into NASA. We're also working on a list on like, hey, here's all these podcasts and YouTube channels of free resources. So you can go find these people like Mamadou that are having these great resources to help students and early career professionals that you can go find them. So we're just trying to put things in one place so people can find those things.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I'm definitely gonna tune in. And definitely will do what I can to help spread the word and the message
Love it.
and the content. Um, so about where do you see yourself? Going in, I guess, near future or long term. just whatever,
Give me a
whatever success.
timeline. Where do I see myself in how many years from now? Because it depends on how many years from now.
2 decades, no, maybe 5 years, and then if you want to
I
live
have
into
plans,
two
man.
decades,
5 years from now, okay. 5 years from now, I see myself for at Boeing. I see
mhm,
myself as an engineering manager. That's what I see myself.
mhm,
I hope I'm still working at Boeing as an engineering manager. That's my professional goal.
mhm,
My nonprofit side, I see it as I've founded a successful nonprofit. I am now the chairman of the board, but I am no longer the president. That we have someone else that's leading and has new ideas. Because after a while, you kind of get stagnant with the same ideas. So
mhm.
we have a new leader. And then maybe I branch out into helping more early career professionals or mid career. Like, how do you get from early career to become a manager? So that's kind of where I see myself in 5 years from now, and maybe with a second kid, maybe. Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see. Sometimes they just pop up, so that happens too. All right, man. All right, that's um well, I've asked a lot of questions, but sometimes there may be something that I don't know to ask. But is there anything else that you want to share or put out there, for anyone to hear or to listen?
Yeah, definitely. I think the only two big things that I always love to share is kind of like, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. So making sure that you're trying to do things that get push you out of your comfort zone. So like me opening up a nonprofit and having 20 volunteers, I am freaking out that I need to give these people stuff to do. I need to start, like, it's intense. I'm scared sometimes of all the responsibility, but it's pushing me out of my comfort zone. It's a big dream. I'm dreaming really big. The other thing I will tell you is, don't give up. You only lose when you stop trying, and that goes for anything. Like with me getting my dream job at Boeing, with me trying to get into these big companies like Northrop Grumman, it was like I went to the career fair 6 different times, talked to recruiters 6 times. Out of those 6 times, I got 3 interviews, and those 3 interviews, none of them until like the sixth time and the fourth interview is when I finally got my dream job. So just keep on trying until you get there.
Mhm.
And it's the same with everything else I do. Is like I just keep on trying until I become kind of successful in something. It was like with LinkedIn content. People give up after like a month. Like imagine posting pretty much every single day for a month and no one's paying attention.
Mhm.
Get used to it.
It's
I
very
posted for
discouraging.
like 2 or 3 months and until like my first viral post. So
Mhm.
it's like people give up way too early and they think like, oh, I tried 1, 2 times and I gave up, and they don't think about the long run and staying consistent. Those were the two top things I would say Mama do.
Wow, that's awesome, man. You touched on a big topic, which I am still learning, to I guess to put into practice, which is really, hanging in there and just I guess going through with the plan, even if you don't see early success. But also, a
Yeah.
lot of people, I'm not immune to this, get discouraged because,
Oh yeah.
um, I guess they're afraid of failure or looking stupid. You don't want to get out. You don't want to be the unicorn in the room, or even though you may have these dreams and visions, aspirations, and or goals and ambitions, but you're just afraid of looking like the unicorn in the room, and so many
You
people get
have to be the
discouraged.
unicorn
So
in the room if you want to be successful. Like if everybody was doing, like if you do what everybody does, you're gonna be like everybody. You're gonna be average.
yeah.
So you really want to do those things that people are like, that's kind of dumb that you're doing that. People ask me so many times, like, why are you doing a podcast? Like, why are you spending your time doing that with students? It's like now it's grown, and people are like, whoa, it's really cool what you're doing. But I'm like, yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't say that back then when I was the only moron by myself talking to a microphone. You didn't say that earlier, did you?
Yeah.
And another thing is like with that is do things that you really enjoy. That even if you never make any money, even if you never become rich and famous and successful doing it, you're happy doing it anyways. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making sure that with the podcast and everything that I do is things that I would do. I do them for free, so I would do them for free,
Yeah.
and I would do even if it's not, never becomes successful. And it's growing, man. Like I just started, and I can already see like the fruits of it. I got nominated for several community service awards that are like national awards. So I'm like, man, I can't believe that. And I never in my world would have imagined that 1 or 2 years ago. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What you're doing is is very inspiring. The work that you're doing is not only helpful, it's inspiring, but also very help. I'm sure is going to be impactful for a long, long time. Just putting it into the universe. So Thank you for all you do, man, and thank you for spending
Thanks
this
for having me.
time with us. It was a pleasure. We have a lot in common, me and you and I. So more than you never know coming to these
Yeah.
conversations, which is why I love having these conversations with other engineers because, you know, put who is the man behind the title and the position. So I really enjoy doing that and showing other listeners that we're all human as well behind it. So I appreciate your time here, and you already mentioned you are on LinkedIn. You mentioned LinkedIn. How right, Arnold Morales. I'll make sure to include your profile in the show notes so
Yeah,
people can
definitely.
easily find you. Is that the best way to reach out to you? Just LinkedIn?
Yeah, best way is LinkedIn. Arnold Morales, you can look me up, and then also Arnold the Engineer. I usually put Arnold the Engineer on all my Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff, so you can follow me, find me that way too.
All right. Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much.